Good evening and welcome to a special edition of The Pulse on this Monday, October 7th. I'm Ruparaj. We are marking 1 year since the deadliest attack in Israel's history. We usually dive into all things people, power, and politics, but today we talk all about people. The people who have been hurt in this conflict, Jewish people and Palestinian people hurt on that day, and the pain that October 7th still makes so many people feel across the globe and here at home. 1 year of fighting between the country and Hamas in Gaza, killing thousands of Palestinians, and a war that's expanded to other countries in just the last few weeks. A conflict that's caused immense pain, as we know, Jewish hostages taken, many of them killed. And that pain is felt across that region and here in Metro Detroit. And ahead of a memorial in Tel Aviv, a sight and sound that's become all too familiar for the people living in that region, air raid sirens blaring, forcing people to take cover. The Israeli military says a missile fired from Yemen is what set that off, but the Air Force was able to intercept it. And across the country, people are marking this somber day with many vigils like this, even people forming human chains by joining hands in public spaces. You'll hear how Americans are marking this day in just a few moments. But after this year of fighting, we wanted to ask you how confident you are that a ceasefire will happen between Israel and Hamas. I asked you a question on social media, and here's some of the responses I got. Charlene saying, I'm not very confident. Neither side wants to concede. Netanyahu is very stubborn and will never compromise, even when many of his own citizens disagree with his tactics. We also got this response from Sangeet. Sangeet Prasad says, I don't see it happening. Both parties want the other wiped out. And finally, this response from Ellen. Frankly, I wish I had the answer. Regardless, it's so very sad as people are dying daily and people are suffering on all sides. The entire situation breaks my heart. I don't believe anybody wins in a war as this war, as loved ones are persecuted and are lost to death. And it seems everybody is suffering one way or another. And on this 1 year mark, more fighting on both sides of the conflict to show you today. In fact, just today, Hamas fired a barrage of rockets at Tel Aviv, and the Israeli military fired more than 120 strikes in Lebanon in just an hour's time. And in the West Bank, Palestinian health officials say Israeli troops shot and killed a 12-year-old boy in a refugee camp. The military said it started shooting on Palestinians who were throwing stones at its forces.
To use the word horrified or horrific, it minimizes what we feel. This is 9/11 and Pearl Harbor all over again in Israel.
October 7th, 2023, a day hundreds of people were taking in a music festival. Many more just going about their daily lives, celebrating the end of autumn harvest when they came under attack. Hamas militants stormed southern Israel, catching the entire nation off guard. 1,200 people, mostly civilians, were killed in that attack. Of those victims, 364 were attending the Nova Music Festival. You know, militants also kidnapped another 250 people during this attack. In fact, at least 100 people have not been returned, according to the Washington Post. 4 of them are Americans, and a third of those 100 people are believed to be dead. And while this is a day of remembrance for the people in Israel, we cannot forget the innocent people of Gaza, of course. Since the attack, Israel has conducted a massive assault on the region, destroying huge areas and sparking widespread hunger, a humanitarian crisis. More than 41,000 Palestinians have been killed since Israel started retaliating for the October 7th attack. And most of those who survived have been driven right from their homes. And on this day, marking the anniversary of the attack here in Metro Detroit, a pair of police investigations into anti-Semitism. The first in Northville. Someone living near the Ridge Hill and Grand Vista subdivisions near 7 Mile found suspicious items right there on their property. The plastic bags had corn kernels and flyers with anti-Semitic material. And then in Bloomfield Township, the Jewish Federation of Detroit headquarters tagged with graffiti. We spoke with both officials with the Federation as well as people in the neighborhoods about what they make of all of this.
It's anti-Semitic vandalism, plain and simple, and we condemn it unequivocally. To see this kind of hatred on our building on the anniversary of that day, it's sickening.
It's terrifying. It's frightening. I feel like we need to protect ourselves.
Every driveway that we walked by had one, and there were neighbors that were on the street, and they held them up. And again, you don't have to be Jewish to be outraged.
Law enforcement in Oakland County investigating both incidents. If you can help solve these crimes, you're asked to pick up the phone, do the right thing, and call police. And now let's take you out to the White House today. President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden marking this solemn anniversary by taking part in a candle lighting ceremony. This Jewish tradition marks the anniversary of a death. The attack by Hamas was the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. As we said, this has been a war that's been emotional for many people here in the United States, especially in Metro Detroit. We're in an area that both has a large Arab and also a Jewish population. And so today on The Pulse, we talk about both perspectives, and we are so glad to have them with us. Perspective from an Arab American and a Jewish leader. We begin with Rabbi Asher Lopatin with the Jewish Federation of Greater Ann Arbor. And it is good to see you. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks so much. It's good to be here. It's a very sad day, but it's good to be here.
Well, it's important to have discussions where, look, we've talked about this before, to sit and to argue and to create more fire where there is so much of it already probably isn't doing the community much good. But sitting down with you and then sitting down with an Arab American leader and try to unpack this is what we want to do here. So I'm going to begin by asking you, a year later, you see the situation as it has continued to unfold. What goes through your mind and your heart?
Well, first of all, today is a day of mourning, and first thing that goes through my mind is seeing those pictures of the graffiti on the Jewish Federation. I wish people would let the Jewish community mourn. One day, October 7th, you know, if you disagree with the way the war is being fought against Hamas, against Hezbollah, then tomorrow, October 8th, 9th, 10th, you know, have a protest. Don't graffiti, but have protests. But I wish people would have the sensitivity to say, you know what, the Jewish community is grieving. It was a horrible day of rape, of murder, of children being abducted, of 250, as you mentioned, being taken to dungeons in Gaza. And let's just let the Jewish community observe that. But I actually think that the Western world was complicit in allowing Hamas to rule over Gaza in a vicious, terrible way, destroying, there's no economy there. And we saw in Lebanon also, what should be a prosperous country, Hezbollah, terrorists, declared by America to be a terrorist organization. The Western world is complicit in letting them rule over Lebanon, and likewise in Yemen as well, letting the Houthis cause starvation in Yemen. Only when Israel is attacked by all these countries at the behest of Iran, then someone is fighting back against these terrorist organizations.
And with respect, Rabbi, I asked you the question not about Yemen and Lebanon, which I see your point, but when you take a look at the folks in Gaza and you look at the Palestinian state and you see how much control Israeli forces have and how much aid, medics, medicine, water has been able to come in years before October 7th, there is some control by the Israeli forces as well. It's not just a matter of them being controlled by Hamas, yes?
Well, no, Israel actually controlled one border, but Egypt controlled the other, and that didn't allow for medicine or those kind of things to come in. It allowed for arms to come in to arm Hamas. But yeah, now that Israel has, for the most part, defeated the major fighting forces of Hamas, now Israel is responsible and is bringing in humanitarian aid and medical aid, and I hope that increases. And one day, without Hamas, I hope the Gaza people, the Palestinians, can rebuild Gaza. But without the stranglehold of Hamas, North, Hezbollah, and I do bring up Yemen because Yemen sent off missiles to rockets today. Yemen has to be freed of the Houthis. And who in the West is going to do this? Is France going to do anything about Hezbollah dominating Lebanon and forcing an economy into the ground?
Let me ask you about Benjamin Netanyahu. And it is hard in this situation for you to assume that you can pretend for a moment that you're not a Jewish American, that you don't have ties emotionally, spiritually to the region. But do you think Benjamin Netanyahu is handling this the right way?
Well, he's doing it as part of a coalition. He's doing with his defense minister, Gallant, and the defense establishment and the IDF and Gallant and everyone. In fact, most Israelis are very much in support of Israel going into Lebanon because there are 80,000 Jewish refugees from the north that have not been able to live in their homes from October 8th.
But in the situation in Gaza, do you think that Benjamin Netanyahu has been way too strong-armed and has allowed and really perpetuated the killing of so many people, I think close to 41,000.
Well, that number is, first of all, a Hamas number, so we don't know about its reliability.
But even if it was 1,000.
Even if it's 1,000 or one person, it's so sad, but Hamas needs to be defeated and the hostages need to be brought home. And it's very clear that, that Sinwar is not interested in negotiating. And I think that's the war that Netanyahu's had. You can like him or dislike him, but it's been a war that Israel felt was important to fight against
at
the
any
terrorists.
cost. At any cost, would you say, do you think Netanyahu is perhaps taking that measure to say at any cost, it doesn't matter how many people die at the hands of this war, we must defeat Hamas?
Well, no, I think Israel's done whatever it possibly can to avoid civilian casualties, and Israel's getting much better at it, at learning techniques, because the Hamas is putting people as human shields. So not at any cost whatsoever, but Israel's fighting a war for its survival, because Hamas promised there'll be other October 7ths, and Israel cannot let that happen and cannot let Hezbollah destroy Israel. And Iran declares that it wants to destroy Israel by 2040. Israel is fighting an existential war. So yes, Israel must avoid civilian casualties, but it's a desperate war that Israel must fight.
And we have to recognize the fact that nobody in their right conscience or mind is on the side of Hezbollah or Hamas here. There are Arab Americans, Palestinians, and Jews, all who agree with that. The issue here is how to fix this situation. I do want to reflect back, though, on the pain that the Jewish community has felt. I don't want to end this interview arguing politics, not adjudicating that. Rather, let's talk about what we can all do, Hindu Americans, Christian Americans, Muslim Americans, Jewish Americans, to be better neighbors to one another.
I totally agree with you. Locally, we have to come together and be sensitive to each other. I have a neighbor that has a sign that's very mocking the hostages, and I wish I could get together with that neighbor, maybe a third person, maybe you, Roop.
There you go.
And can sit down and say, look, this really hurts me. Can you have a different sign that sends the same kind of messages that you want, but that doesn't hurt me? So yes, I hope that here in Detroit, we can come together, maybe in small groups, and learn how to be sensitive to each other, even when we disagree strongly. And I think that will be a great comfort for all the entire Jewish community.
As a kid who grew up down the road from this TV station in Troy, I grew up knowing that that's what makes this area so great, is that sense of solidarity. So let's hope we can find that again. I want to start by saying thank you for beginning and having this conversation with us here today.
Thanks so much,
We're thinking of all of you here
It
on
means
this day.
so much to us.
Thank you, Rabbi. We're continuing this conversation on the other side of the break. An associate professor with U of M Dearborn's History Center for Arab American Studies, talking about that perspective. Next. Back now in a special edition of The Pulse, marking 1 year since the attack on Israel by Hamas. Joining us now to offer the Arab American perspective, or an Arab American perspective, is Hani Bawardi, an associate professor with the University of Michigan, Dearborn's History Center for Arab American Studies. And we thank you for being here today. We never want to assume that one person represents everyone's perspective, but you certainly do share in the sentiments of what so many people in the Arab American world have been feeling. And I wanted to just give you an opportunity to talk about that. I want to begin, though, by talking about today's anniversary of what happened on October 7th last year at that music festival, the Nova Music Festival. I want to give you the opportunity to offer your thoughts on that terrible day that happened a year ago.
Sure. First off, I don't think Hamas fighters knew that the festival was going on. So they meticulously planned their attack, that's exactly what it was, as a military operation against Israeli military targets. And they were very successful, to the surprise of everyone, including themselves. The fact that they were able to encroach into the occupied territories to the extent that they did, and stumbled on the festival, led to tragedies for sure. But then again, information is hard to come by in terms of who killed whom. For example, a lot of these celebrants who took refuge in apartments and houses nearby were bound by Israeli helicopters. We have ample evidence to that effect.
But Hani, we also know that there were so many people who were killed right in the midst of the festival. There were so many atrocities that took place. And I imagine that there are some things that happened there that in your mind are indefensible. on that day, October 7th?
Killing an unarmed civilian in any context is indefensible. Right. We can agree on that. At the same time, it is important to understand the context in which all this happened.
Well, spell out some of what has happened since that time. On this anniversary day, of course, as we talked to the rabbi earlier, you know, we're talking about those atrocities that people are reflecting on, lighting candles, trying to understand. 1 year later, we have 41,000 plus people who are Arab American who have died in Gaza. I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this war and how it seems as though there's no end at this point. Do you have any hope at all that this can end?
One should never lose hope. Arabs and Jews have too much in common. Few people in the world understand suffering as they do, and they can learn from each other. But then again, why did this happen, and the context and the history behind it is critical to understand in order to kind of assess what the future might look like. To the first time in Israeli history, we have little chance of finding anyone within Israeli politics to talk to. Israeli society as a whole is lost sight of a two-state solution where they can live side by side with Palestinians. There's no stomach for talking about that. As for the Palestinians, what happened since October the 7th of last year, within this year, they suffered more casualties than all the atrocities and massacres and wars they experienced at the hands of, I should say, Zionist forces. I really don't want to say Jewish people at all, because within Jewish society, many stood side by side with Arab Americans in protest. More of them were arrested than have Arab Americans, by the way. So just to put it in perspective, the scale of the devastation and carnage that happened in Gaza has not been seen in world history since World War II.
Hani, if there's a way to try to figure this out, there are several solutions, several doors of opportunities to try to put an end to this. One of them is to release the hostages. It takes the release of the hostages, and now you are opening your way into a place of perhaps peace. Do you wish that would happen?
Okay, I don't speak for Hamas.
Of course not.
They don't need me to speak for them. They don't speak for me, as a matter of fact. But language is very important. In their minds, people who suffered 10,000 detainees at the hands of the Israelis, including little children as young as 7 or 8 years old, and women, and were mistreated in Israeli jails, they look at the people they captured as prisoners that they can leverage to free their own people. This is the minimum they hoped to get from the Israelis, short of at least allowing foodstuffs to enter the Gaza Strip. You have to understand that the Israelis counted how many people are in the Strip, and then they counted the calories they allowed in, and came up with a formula that says survival plus, meaning will allow enough food for them to survive, but that's it. So you have stunted growth.
But Hani, when you talk about the atrocities that the Arab Americans have suffered at the hands of Israeli forces, and you talk about children being hurt, there are so many of these hostages that have experienced the same kind of turmoil and suffering and torture at the hands of Hamas fighters. So this, I know there's no equivalency per se, but there should be an understanding that these poor hostages were also dealing with hell and back, and are still perhaps dealing with that if they're alive.
There is not a shred of evidence, none, that Hamas fighters raped or tortured anyone. If there is, we have to stand firm against that. There is evidence that the Israelis did rape Palestinian women, according to the UN, and all the news that was printed, in fact, by the New York Times, were proven to be false.
But there are congressional records that document there have been rapes at the hands of Hamas fighters, and those congressional records have been presented and, of course, on the record been talked about in Washington. So carnage on both sides here. What is your hope moving forward in the next 3 months, 6 months, 8 months, 1 year?
I think information, enough information to kind of assess what's happening on the grounds. We have live footage that shows that Hamas fighters were telling their Israeli would-be prisoners that we're Muslims, we don't harm women and children. Can I have a banana on my way out? And the woman says, yeah, you can have one, just get out during this attack. So we have to discern exactly what happened first. We don't know exactly what happened, congressional records or not. Well, but as far as hope is concerned, which is the core of your question, again, where would that come from? So you have in Israel a government.
And we want to give equal time to both sides, and we've given an allotted time to our leader who came on earlier. So if you wouldn't mind, quickly, if you would just wrap this up.
Absolutely. In Israel, there is a government that is more extreme than any in its history, who are disinclined to talk to the Palestinians, and they believe in one approach only: kill as many as you can in Gaza and now in Lebanon.
Hani, I want to say thank you for joining us here today. Television can be cruel in terms of timing on such an important topic, but both you and the rabbi were given equal time. I want to thank you for your time here today. Thanks for talking to us here on The Pulse. President Biden taking questions from reporters as he makes his first ever appearance at a White House briefing. A lot happening in Washington. We'll have the latest on that next on The Pulse. Back now on The Pulse, covering all things people, power, and politics, and getting you up to speed with the big headlines of the day. Less than 3 months after the attempt on his life, former President Donald Trump returned to Butler, Pennsylvania this weekend alongside guest speaker Elon Musk, who told supporters it's imperative that Trump gets back into the White House.
The true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. President Trump must win to preserve the Constitution. He must win to preserve democracy in America.
I want to just let you know that tonight I returned to Butler in the aftermath of tragedy and heartache to deliver a simple message to the people of Pennsylvania and to the people of America. Our movement to make America great again stands stronger, prouder, more united, more determined, and nearer to victory than ever before.
During that visit, Trump also expressed his condolences to the family of the volunteer firefighter killed in that shooting, as well as those who were hurt that day. In the meantime, his visits on the campaign trail continue this week with another stop in Michigan. On Thursday, he'll be speaking at the Detroit Economic Club. His running mate, J.D. Vance, will be in Eastern Market in Detroit tomorrow. Vice President Harris spending her Saturday meeting with residents and first responders as she visited North Carolina to receive a briefing on the hurricane recovery there. She also helped pack aid kits and praised the volunteers who are helping their neighbors.
I came out to talk with the folks who have been doing God's work on the ground here in the last several days. The work that is happening here and that continues really is the best of what we can do to bring federal, state, and local resources together in a way that is coordinated with one purpose and one purpose only, which is bringing relief, support, and help to the people who are most in need and desperate for help and desperate to be seen and heard.
During her visit, the vice president pledged ongoing federal support for those affected by the hurricane. This was Harris's second trip in 4 days to the area. So far, more than 230 Helene-related deaths have been confirmed across the southeast. That number is expected to rise. And in case you missed it, President Biden making a surprise appearance at the White House briefing on Friday, his first since taking office. He touched on a number of topics, including the suspended port strike, the situation in the Middle East, and concerns about election aftermath next month.
Confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it will be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election were very dangerous.
Although President Biden took questions, he was not asked about Hurricane Helene and concerns about money from FEMA.